I'm chuckling a little bit because Sharonda tapped me on my shoulder after the performance and said, sorry. And I sat with that for a moment. But there's no reason to apologize, because I hope you see what I see in your community. That's what greatness looks like. And you shouldn't be afraid of it. You shouldn't be afraid to follow it. You should embrace it. And I embrace it because of what I saw: strength. I saw love. I saw beauty. I saw my people. And I want to talk to you a little bit about my people this morning, because I'm at an interesting point in my career where I done fought and struggled to get out of poverty, and I'm out of poverty, and I've been around long enough to see a lot of stuff. And one of the things I often see or don't see is what I see in this room this morning. The first is a strong institution led by a person of color. That's the first thing. I came through in the 90s when there were strong CDCs all around the country, and then they got decimated. And I often lament the fact that so many of our schools are not educating us to do this work. You get a lot of student loan debt, but you don't get the skills to do this work. And so to see an institution that is actually developing the technical competency to do this work is a real gift. This is not common around the country, and I'm on the road probably about 60 or 70% of the time. This is not common to have this type of institution here. And I want to share that with you so that you cherish it and don't look other places and neglect what you got in your own house. Because there's too much of that going on right now, especially with leaders of color. We look everywhere for that shiny thing and don't see what's right in front of us. And so the Mel King Institute, Sharonda's leadership, this is a gem in your community when it comes to community development. And so I just wanted to just start there by acknowledging that, because it is rare. But then I also want to acknowledge something that I think is even rarer, and it's important for us, those of us in this room, all of us in this room who lead right now, to understand. Do you understand the shoulders that we're standing on? Do you understand what Mel King sacrificed for us to be able to be in this room and do this work? Do you really get that? Because if you do, I wonder if you would do something differently about how you take up your role. And I'm not offering a critique, I'm offering a question for you. Because that's what's on my heart and mind about what I'm thinking about right now. The shoulders that I stand on that allow me to have the privilege to be in a position where I could either choose to do the work or just look the part. And if you want to embody love right now, I think you must fight. I think you must fight. I think you can be loving and fight. But this is the moment to fight. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to operationalize some of the skills that you get at the Mel King Institute by sharing a little bit of my own journey of how I integrate some of these tools, because I think they're important for this moment. And so the first thing that I've learned from leaders like Mel and others who have blessed me in my career to nurture me and support me is that the self is an instrument that should be played beautifully. The self. And I want you to think about yourself. How are you playing it in a beautiful manner? And for whom? And for what purpose? When I talk about the self, what I'm talking about is you manifesting the personal agency and power to do what your community needs to do without asking permission. That's what I mean by the self. And too many of us now have the title but are afraid to even name our own people. let alone serve them. So what I want you to think about is, what does yourself need to do to step into your role more powerfully, to be of service? When I say that, I'm talking about the 100 million in America living at 200% of poverty. That's 1 in 3 folks in America. And here is why the self is so important for me. As a leader of a national think tank, it is easy to show up and write reports and talk and miss the whole point of, can you answer the fundamental question, is anyone better off? Folks, that's Mel King's question. Is anyone better off? For all this activity, is anyone better off? I want myself to be able to answer that question. And I'm asking you to think about, in your work, when you're lying in your bed at night and you can lie to no one, can you answer that question? Is anyone better off because of your service? And here's what I know, if you're going to be able to answer that question, is anyone better off, that you got to manifest. And this is why I think the Mel King Institute is so important. The first is, you got to bring some discipline to your work. There is going to come a point where just being naturally talented will not get you any further. And it's the same lesson I learned playing ball and then ran into the boys from Coral Gables, Florida, who were bigger and stronger. I had to learn to practice and get technically proficient. And right now in our sector, there's a lot of lack of discipline. This is not a moment to just talk. Do you have the technical skill to lead, folks? That's the first thing I want you to think about. Do you have the technical proficiency to be able to move groups from talk to action? Can you harness all this energy that you bring together in meetings? And what I want you to think about is, what is your technical discipline for doing that? In coaching parlance, what is your offense or defense that you're trying to get folks to run? Can you call it out? Is it RBA? Is it Six Sigma? Is it balanced scorecard? What is it? Because if you can't call it out, it means you haven't mastered it, which means you're leaving too much on the table, because when you bring people together to align contribution, you actually can't hold that container. You're losing too much out of that container because it's not tight. And this is a lesson that I learned in my personal role, because when I came to policy, I think I was helping President Obama with Promised Neighborhoods, and we were helping 60 communities. And I used to get frustrated. We were bringing people together. We had a strong results framework, and folks weren't making progress. And I remember something that a mentor told me in my 20s. She says, you know what, Michael, your cross to bear will be that you get things quickly. And so what if you can't help people get better? And I've always remembered that. And what I had to slow down and realize was that I was really being undisciplined in how I was bringing people together to create a new possibility. I wasn't using any discipline. I was just using my natural talent. And I finally hit the wall. And so what I'm asking you to think about now is, if the self is to be mastered so it can be optimized to be in service, I want you really to think about now the technical tools that you have mastered, and how do you allow them to just run in the background. When you master them, you don't have to tell people, I'm getting ready to do RBA on you. I'm getting ready to do Six Sigma. It just runs in the background. Because what needs to be manifested right now, once you've mastered the technical, is the soul of the work, people. And here's what I mean by that. This is a moment, because of the shoulders of the people that we have on the shoulders of the folks that we're privileged to stand on. It is time to accelerate. This is not a time to center whiteness. And here's what I mean by that. If you go back and you look at the arc of our work, we've been spending a lot of time trying to make white folks feel comfortable with developing our communities. We play with language. We try to finesse a report. We put people on these learning journeys. And we're doing all of that, and we can't still answer the question, is anyone better off? Because you've centered the wrong thing. You've been centering trying to make white folks comfortable with your liberation. And I don't know if that's possible. And this is not a critique of white folks, because I'm seeing the same thing happen with black folks now who are leading, quite frankly. My point is this: what you need to center is a population. That's why I started with the 100 million living at 200% of poverty. I'm not centering PolicyLink. I'm not centering the White House. I'm not centering state government. I'm not centering a bank. I'm centering, what the hell am I doing for the 100 million? And when you're clear about that, you show up in a very different way. I actually don't have time to worry about whether people get it or not anymore. Because here's what I know. At PolicyLink, when we started, we helped put equity on the map. It took us 15 years before Angela Glover Blackwell, my predecessor, could say black folks. 15 years. Now, over the last 5 that we can say black folks, now we don't want to do the darn work. And here's the danger of that. There's a beautiful book back there on the table called The Color of Law. If folks don't understand the structure of oppression at this point, it is not my job to educate you anymore. It is because you have chosen not to learn. You cannot be in this field and not understand the context by which we work and think it's my job to educate you. And it matters not what race you are. We can't accelerate because too many of us are lazy and don't want to either understand and learn the context of the struggle, or we just don't care. My job is not to judge it. My job is to keep it out of my way. And what I'm asking you to think about at this time, what would happen if you stopped trying to center helping people to get it and you just did the work? What would happen? What would happen if you just centered the work? And I went back and I was looking at some stuff on Mel King. Even he had to go to the streets every once in a while. Folks, I wonder if we will go to the streets anymore. We get mad at the youngins who go to the street, but they're actually going to the street as a direct response of our institutions having a poor capacity to be of service. Before we get to racist institutions, I'm talking about our beloved communities institutions, folks. Too many of our communities have institutions that say they are of service, have the right mission, say all the right words, and don't have the heart for this work. And what I'm asking you to think about is that is not Mel King's legacy. What I'm asking you to think about today is this is how I'm choosing to show up because I understand what the work is. When you think about 1 in 3 struggling in this nation, we are well beyond small solutions. And what I'm inviting you to think about is there's something quite liberating when you can stand on the fact that you don't actually have to apologize for loving your people, for loving all people. You actually don't have to apologize for wanting to liberate folks from organizations and systems that are oppressive. Why do we act shamefaced about that? When you hear love is the answer, liberating from folks from oppression is the manifestation of that. That is the work for our generation. That's the work for our generation, folks. Everything you want to do in this community is going to be undercut by structures that are repelling everything you're trying to do. You can do all the training you want, but if you won't take on these police departments, these health departments, these land use policies, etc., what's the point? What's the point? What I'm trying to get you to think about right now is there is a technical aspect of this work. There is an adaptive part of this work. The adaptive part is you figuring out how to use yourself to be as catalytic as Mel King was, to be as catalytic as so many who have come and gone and suffered so much for us to be in these positions to serve. And now that we're in these positions, what will we do with the privilege? What will we do with it? What you hear me saying is, I'm actually not going to spend it trying to convince white folks that liberating my folks from oppression is a good thing to do. I'm not going to convince black folks that it's a good thing to stop being so political in our own communities and fighting amongst ourselves. What I need to do is have the skill to navigate through all this and get some results. What I want you to center, your magnificent obsession, should be the results you are trying to achieve. That is the frontier of the work. Nothing else matters, folks. You got to be able to call it. What is the result you are trying to achieve? And at what scale? And so as you go into rooms, after today, I want you to hold just a few things. Can you hold the people? Who's this meeting about? What place are we talking about where these folks live? What's the call to action around the result? And how will we measure progress? Because if those four things are not in the room, you are not in a results-based conversation, folks. You are wasting your time. And here's why so much good effort gets blown out the window. Because if we would stop just doing anything for a moment and looked each other in the eye and said, do we really want to help these people today? The story you heard about the sewage backing up and destroying folks' homes, that wouldn't stand. That wouldn't stand. The same way it wouldn't stand today with what's going on in Puerto Rico, what's going on in Flint, if we actually really said, who are we talking about? Folks, this is a moment to fight, and let me tell you why. Take Flint as an example. I know so many folks who want to talk about early brain development and after-school programs and all of these wonderful things, and yet they forget the beauty of what lead does to the developmental stage of a child. And yet you won't fix the pipes. Simple thing, a technical thing, won't fix the pipes. But then you want to ask nonprofits about, well, how are you improving third grade reading? That is dumb as hell. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the conundrum that we're in right now. This is the conundrum that we are in every community. Folks look at you as somehow you don't deliver when you've been holding it down for a long time. And the structural stuff is being unattended to. And yet somehow folks want you to work miracles. It's time to say, no, I'm not a miracle worker in that regard. And what I'm asking you to think about, folks, is think about how long Flint has gone on. There's a Flint here. I just don't know what it is, but it's here. Think about how long Flint is going on. Think about every day how many kids are being poisoned. What I want you to think about is oppression operates at scale. Oppression operates at scale. We talk about scale, but there are groups and energies out there that operate at scale. Denying folks the vote in Georgia is operating at scale. Reproductive rights in Georgia and Missouri, operating at scale. Folks, you are the frontier of what equity looks like in America. What I'm asking you to do is stop being apologetic about it. Stop thinking that this is an aside. You are fundamental to a strong nation. You've been building it. I'm asking you, don't forget your strength. Don't forget the courage. Don't forget the dynamism you saw on this stage today. Because if this nation is going to see its way out of this, we're going to have to be loving and we're going to have to fight. And we're going to have to help people understand that certain things will no longer be tolerated. And sometimes, folks, that means some of us in our nice suits and clothes and dresses are going to have to join with folks in community and go to the streets. The time has come to stop begging and cajoling and asking people to get it, because you see, since we want to be evidence-based, y'all hear that a lot, right? Well, the evidence shows us that ain't working so well for us, is it? That ain't working so well. Just keep writing another report, trying another fancy frame. It's not working so well for our people. And when I say our people, I'm talking about poor whites as well, because the reality is this. The world that we have created now is actually too toxic for white America. We know how to survive. We actually know how to survive. But if you read Dying of Whiteness, you will see that the mortality rates for white men are increasing faster than anybody else, folks. And yet, we're still allowing the things that would be the solutions to be racialized so that they never get implemented. That's the craziness of the moment that we are in. That the folks who are dying from this are resisting the most. And our job has to find the breakthrough. Now, why am I talking to you like this? I'm talking to you like this because I believe that this is a moment to honor the folks who have built this nation, honor folks like Mel King, and for us to step into this breach and get this nation to the next phase of really realizing the full aspiration of its ideals, even when they didn't include us. It's our nation now, and we need to own it, and we need to finish the ideal of making this democracy work for everyone. That's our job now. That's our job. And what I'm asking you to consider is be intolerant of people and things that get in the way of the results of making this nation work for everyone. That's what this moment is about. That's what embodying Mel King's spirit is about. And every last one of you has a role to play in that. You can start in your own institutions. Our own institutions should look like the world we want to see externally. Mel King built an enduring great institution. Imagine what it would look like if you stopped saying you can't find people of color or women and you just hired them and your organization started there. Imagine what that would look like. Imagine if you hired all this young talent that's coming off of the streets into AmeriCorps and these other programs, and they're looking for a home. Imagine if you took them under your wing and showed them how this game is really played. Imagine what would happen. Imagine what would happen if you picked up the phone like you can do and you told folks, you really need to stand down on that right now because we're not going to tolerate that. Imagine what would happen if we weren't afraid to use our voice, if we weren't afraid to use our power. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you there is no fancy way out of this unless you want to lead through it. Unless you want to lead through it. And what I know about this sector and this field and the folks in this room, that's what we've been doing. What I'm asking you to think about doing is doubling down on it now. Bringing greater discipline to this work. Bringing greater vision to this work. Bringing greater heart and courage to say what needs to be said in the room and not in the parking lot. To fight for all. Every single day. Don't center whiteness. Don't center blackness. Center love in this room. Center it. That's why you came to this field. What I know is, when I came to this field, I got fired right as I got going in my profession. I started in Kansas City, a Jesuit priest. I called him up and said, hey, man, I can't work at Sprint anymore. I done sold life insurance to my family. I don't have any more folks to sell it to. That's not my thing. I'm going to start a foundation. I'm going to raise $20 million to see innovations in education. Father Savage took me under his wing. He knew I wasn't going to raise the money, but he introduced me to the elites in Kansas City. One of the elites ended up hiring me at the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. That's how my career got started. Overnight, I went from struggling to a star because of my proximity to money and power. 5 years later, it was an opportunity to go run a nonprofit. You know how when folks get a disillusion, how funders will just kind of slowly step away from the table? They don't kill the nonprofit. but they kind of just stopped funding it. And so it was $700,000 in the hole, and I said, I want to go run this. I went and turned it around in 30 days, but here was the problem. I had the audacity to start asking the question, the things that the after-school programs that we can pay for aren't the same that those kids are getting. And I issued a report that asked the question, would you put your children and grandchildren in stuff like this? That sanction of having the audacity in those early days to learn who I would fight for caused me to lose my job in Kansas City. I went from a star to an angry black man to sitting and going to anger management to talk to a woman named Dr. Dottie Fannin-Steele for a year. Now, I'm telling you that story for this reason, because I've been around a long time. It was the best gift that I got. Because sometimes you can talk a good game about who you serve. But here it is, I'm coming out of poverty, and all I had to do was be quiet. Just be the good brother that can string a sentence together. I could have stayed at the foundation for life. But I kept running my mouth. It was the most liberating thing to get fired. It was the most liberating thing because I was living in my true agency. Come 20 years later, I get hired to come to PolicyLink to do the same work that I got fired for 20 years ago. I'm telling you that story. I'm telling you that story as I close. Because if you think you are as good as you know you are, and if you are using your God-given abilities, you're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. I did have to wander in the wilderness for a bit. I did have to work at HUD for 11 years. I wandered in the wilderness. Then I got liberated. I found my salvation. But the point is, I used that season to get better, to get technically smarter, politically more savvy, and to get even clearer and more resolute about what I wanted to fight for. So now that I'm in this moment at PolicyLink, there is absolutely no confusion about what I'm to do. And that is the most liberating place to be in. I'm telling you that story because some of you all need to get back to that place. I'm telling you that story because some of you all got to get back to this place. In 2012, as I took this job, I was coming up out of the Baltimore train station, and I was having a hard time breathing. I was like, man, I know I'm in shape. What's wrong? So I sat down, was spending the weekend in D.C., I went to the CVS. I was going to get some, go see the nurse there and see if they give me something. Thought I was getting a cold. Fortunately, the CVS was closed, the Minute Clinic. I go back and the line was too long, and I was talking to my mother on the phone. Fortunately, listen to your mama. He says, well, why don't you just go to the hospital? I'm like, Mama, ain't nothing wrong with me. I'll be all right. But I went on to the hospital anyway. So I go to GW Hospital, and they keep coming in. I'm getting frustrated. They keep coming in and asking me all these questions. And then finally, one of the interns comes in and he starts talking, and we get on the fact that I travel a lot. And he says, oh, well, Mr. McAfee, come back here with me. And so before this, everybody had been laughing and we joking and stuff. We get back there, he puts some iodine in my veins, put me in the machine. Everybody stops laughing. It gets deathly quiet in the room. Discovered is that I had one blood clot will kill you. But I had multiple blood clots. They had broken up, and they were in both of my lungs. But I was not having any pain or anything. I was going to go back to the gym room and just work out, try to sweat it out. So here it is. I'm grounded in D.C. Again, best time of my life in my 20s getting fired. Best time right now sitting in the hospital. It was the best time sitting in that hospital. My wife comes out and says, will you please shut the heck up? Because I'm really happy right now. The reason why I was happy is because I actually, while I was not ready to check out, I was actually not sitting there like, oh God, if you give me another day, I will do what I'm supposed to do in my life. I was actually doing it. So I was quite at peace. I knew my family would be taken care of, but more importantly, I had been doing the work that I want to do. Some of you all may not get those crazy gifts that I'm telling you about. Hopefully you don't. But it's something quite empowering to be confronted with the choice of who do you serve in your 20s And then in your 40s to be confronted with what have you been doing with your life? And then to come through it and say, I'm still in this game, let's fight. Let's do the work. And that's what this moment is about to me, folks. Each and every one of us taking up our personal agency to love each other, to make this nation work for everyone. To be intolerant of the oppressive ways in which too many people are suffering. And to not apologize for the fact that you actually love everybody. That's what this moment is. If you were in that hospital bed, what would you be asking for? What would you be asking for? What I know is this. Who knows how much time we all have left on this earth? But I know the gift that my ancestors gave me, and I'm going to take it to the wall. That's me using myself as an instrument that chooses to be played beautifully. I can't answer the question for you. But what I know is this. If you stay rooted in community, you will do the right work. You don't need the answers. Folks in the community will tell you what it is. What you need to do right now is to listen. Listen to what folks are telling you they need you to support them with, partner with them on, fight with them on. Be down with that. Be down with what community folks are telling you needs to happen, and then bring all of your personal power, your positional power to bear, to be liberating. What I know is this. If we take our game to the next level as a field who has done so much to make this nation great, you will see it through. So this is our moment. Equity is front and center. What I'm asking you to do is don't water equity down. The work is not finished. 1 in 3 Americans are still struggling. And what we saw by the federal shutoff, when the federal government shut down, is we could even go higher than 200% of poverty. There's a lot of folks in this nation that need us to fight harder. I'm asking you to put it all on the line. When you put it all on the line, I'm asking you to use the resources of the Mel King Institute to bring the technical proficiency, to bring the power and the spirit that's manifested in community in this room to your work, and then submit to a population that needs you. Submit to it. Humble yourself to it. If you do that, this will be a nation where everybody can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. So thank you.